Good. Thanks for bringing that up. And we did have some people join us, right? I see Mrs. Barrett is here. Good to see you. And I think somebody else joined us, right? That maybe didn't get a chance to introduce themselves.
Hi, so I joined late. My name is Mrs. Newman. Sorry, my name's Care.
Okay.
And I don't know if what you said in the introductions, but I teach 8th grade at the Cedar Middle School.
Okay, great. Good to
Thanks.
have you. Okay. All righty.
Lynn Barrett. I teach 3rd grade at a charter school in Vineyard, Utah.
Okay. And I have no idea where Vineyard, Utah is. But that's okay. Okay. So what are your thoughts about the course? The other class was not big on, when we started out, we did a lot of collaborative work, and we had professional learning community groups, and they weren't super excited about it but by the end of the 7 weeks, they had bonded. And just like happens in a lot of classrooms, I think they would tell you they learn more from each other than from me, but that's usually so. That was one thing that we did do. We worked in professional learning groups. We did that. So that's an option. I was thinking about like, for example, doing this book here, the Cornelius Minor book, doing that one as like a book club, where in your small groups, then you meet and discuss about this book. This one's kind of like, it's similar to this one in the sense that both of the authors try to open up for you. They're considered master teachers, and this one's more like in practice, and then this one's more about kind of the theory behind it as well. And I know that we have a range of people in the sense that we have some elementary teachers, we have some special education, we have some secondary, but if we all kind of have just a benchmark, then we can say, well, this is the same as me, or this is different from me, and we can kind of use it as a kind of a home base, and then work, from that. How are we the same? How are we different? For example, Mr. Minor is teaching on the East Coast. Well, rural Utah is very different from that, but there's also a lot of issues that overlap as far as urban and rural go. Oftentimes resources are something that are a challenge. So there's some things that overlap, and just even the differences between them are instructive as well. So that's kind of running through my head. Big project. I feel like I probably, we need to demonstrate that, we have some knowledge and skill and disposition about what it means to be a master teacher. And so the other class kind of felt like they didn't have enough say-so in what their big project was to make it useful to them. So that I thought was some helpful feedback. We focused on, we looked at really 2 parts. The first part was, why don't we have a lot of master teachers? And that's no disrespect or I guess put downs on teachers, because I do feel that teachers are kind of used as scapegoats a lot of times, that all these other institutions used to handle some, or at least, you know, a component of the what was happening in society. And now, as all of these other institutions are shifting and changing, they're not taking up as much of it. And then schools are microcosms of larger society. And then we're supposed to be miracle workers, and we're supposed to do it on very few resources, being paid very little. So it's very easy to blame teachers for a lot of things that are the ills of actual society and not what we do as educators. So the reason I say that is that we divided it into part one was, okay, schools are supposed to be the great equalizers. And, you know, none of us as educators, we don't go into our classrooms or into our profession, even if we come at it from an alternative route into education. We don't come into teaching because we want to be dream wreckers. We generally speaking, we come in because we want to be dream keepers. And a lot of times in secondary, they might have a particular love for history or particular love for their content area that they want to share. And in elementary, you hear a lot of us will say things like, I love children, I love learning, I love sharing that. And so we generally, people who go into education, they don't generally go in because they're like, I'm gonna get rich. They usually know that it's usually something more about being a servant, as some sort of a servant leader, if you will. So given that schools are supposed to be these great equalizers, teachers go into it for good intentions, and yet to this day, schools actually reproduce society's larger inequalities. So they're supposed to produce educational equity, but historically speaking, schools have actually been part of working class kids get working class jobs. So we spent probably the first 3 weeks on looking at why. What are the socio-political, historical factors that play into disrupting the democratic potential of schools? So we analyzed that, and they chose something like maybe testing the school climate, socioeconomic class, or whatever. Each group kind of chose something to analyze. How does it disrupt the democratic potential of schools? And then for part 2, weeks 4 through 7, then they looked at what is it that these exemplary teachers do? Because even though historically speaking, since we have had public schooling, they started out as the common schools in the United States. Since we've had those, they haven't been working well for all groups of kids, and actually come to find out they weren't even intended to work well for all groups of kids. Not for girls, they weren't intended for kids of color, they weren't intended for kids who didn't speak English. So schools were never actually intended to serve all these groups well. But as more and more groups in special education knows this well as well, as more and more groups came into public schooling, you know, there's been this kind of push and pull between, we say that everybody needs an equal opportunity, but it's not happening. And despite that, we've still had some teachers, like I did a lot of research on exemplary Black teachers, and every family, a lot of families, I won't say every family, but a lot of families here in the South, Big Mama, every family, a lot of families have Big Mama in their family. And my colleague, Dr. Cleveland Hayes, his mother and both of his grandmothers were educators for over 50 years. And they taught even during racial segregation, and they were teaching under the most horrendous situations. When Cleveland's mom was teaching in Mississippi during the early 1970s. Now, keep in mind, this was long after the Brown decision. She was teaching in Mississippi, not too far from where I live in Alabama, and there was a Ku Klux Klan cross burning at the end of her dad's driveway. And so, you know, these things were happening, and the Black teachers were being fired, or they were also being, you know, some of them were being put in white schools. The white teachers were not coming to the Black schools. The Black schools ended up being closed. But my point is that there were a lot of times in the history of US public schooling where times have been tough. You know, right now times are tough because we've been dealing with a pandemic, and we've been asking teachers to do these incredible, heroic things under really harsh conditions. And so that's our time right now, but in other generations, they've had hard times too. And there's always been some teachers that have been exemplary, even though we know that there's been all of this kind of pattern of systematically excluding whole groups of students, that schools weren't even made for them. And yet there's always been these dream keepers. There's always been these exemplary teachers. When I started teaching school or teaching future teachers here in Mobile, Alabama, our schools are very segregated. Nobody will tell you that. That's kind of our little secret. But if you actually go to them, you'll see that, you know, you have schools that are like 99% Black, and some of them are even 100% Black. And then a lot of the white schools are private schools. They're you know, some sort of denominational school. And so when we send student teachers out there, I really wanted them to know that it is true that all kids can learn. And so I needed to put them in classrooms where the teachers were making a difference. And do you know, it is possible that you would see the children, the same children, go from one classroom to the next classroom. And in the first classroom, it's orderly, kids are studying, kids are learning, they're having discussions. The same children walk down the hall and go to the next classroom, and all hell breaks out. And it's not the kids that changes, it's the teachers. So there's always been these teachers who are able to teach well under difficult circumstances. So that's kind of the two sides of the same coin that that we looked at. And so I guess that's kind of the parameters. I'm not saying that's exactly how we have to do it, but I'm looking at, you know, our focus is on these exemplary teachers who are able to really make things happen, even under difficult circumstances like a pandemic. So that's kind of, we can tailor it however you think would be helpful. you know, what kind of, we have to show some accountability to the university that you know these things. But we can really tailor it how you would like to do it. If you want a lot of group work, if you don't, you know, things like that. Well, we've got 7 weeks. So I'm going to be quiet now. I'm going to take some notes on what you all say. I got my pen.
My question about the collaborative work, I've already missed a meeting with a group from another class, and I still did my assignment. Everything was fine, but
Mhm.
is there a way we can do collaborative work where we're just emailing, so it's not like we're doing Zoom meetings all the time? Is that something that could happen?
I'm going to write that down. I'm not going to say yes or no right now, just because I think we should talk about it as a class. I can go either way. I can, you know, I've seen it work well in, I like it when people have interactions and can see each other, but I also know that there is something to be said about efficiency, and we've got 7 weeks and that's it. So I'm wide open to that, to what the preferences are. So I'm making a note of it.
Could you give us some examples of some of the projects they did? This is only like my 3rd master's class, so could you just give us some ideas of what's floating out there as far as choices?
Okay. For a final project, one group, they did, they looked at like, what are the, as a class, we had been examining what are the characteristics and dimensions and principles that exemplary teachers tend to have. And so one of them is that they tend to be warm demanders. And so one group looked at that. So there were kind of really 3 big principles that exemplary teachers do. Is 1, they promote high levels of academic achievement. Number 2, they promote high levels of cultural competency. And number 3 is they were very real about oppression, the socio-political awareness. So what that meant was that you have to pass these tests. You have to be able to show, you know, whatever the state requires, you got to pass those tests. So high levels of academic achievement. And then the cultural competency was like, my children can be Black and successful in school. My children can be Latinx and successful in school. And then the awareness, the socio-political awareness was that, you know, really about like, I understand that as a kindergarten teacher, I identify as a kindergarten teacher. And one of the things that we did a lot was community helpers. I, as a teacher, was very aware that my students did not see the community helpers of Mr. Policeman as a helper. So that was how I, you know, brought that to the conversation. I was aware of that. I would say things, and even like if students like didn't bring their homework, and then would say things like, well, we didn't have any power last night. I didn't have any electricity. I know you didn't have any power last night, you know, and I'm going to adjust that, but I'm not going to allow that to be an excuse for them not to have high levels of achievement. So, and even for my college students, like we just came out of Mardi Gras, and there is a lot of drinking and socializing. And I had one of my students arrested, and he called me and he was like, well, I can't make it to class. You know, the bar is here. You have to be at class, you know. So it was like, you have to make adjustments where you're aware of these kind of things that are happening, but that's not an excuse, or I'm going to find a way to eliminate excuses for you, and then you are going to rise to this level. And I expect that I see you as this diamond in the rough, and I'm going to polish this. And so those three characteristics they're the principles that, even though I'm not a cookie cutter of what another exemplary teacher does, you can look across the board and you can see, what do? They have high levels of academic achievement. They promote cultural competency. They use socio-political awareness. So different groups would do things like they focused on that strand, like cultural competency. Other groups looked at developing climate in the school, at the classroom and the building level, at how the three principles, high academic achievement, cultural competency, and socio-political awareness, could be manifested in the climate of the school. So they looked at all three of those. Some groups looked at testing. So I think I'm thinking about maybe Trevor's content area. To my mind, that physical fitness thing, I'm like, ooh, there's, that seems like full of possibilities to look at what exemplary teachers do and how to bring the cultural backgrounds of the students into that, where you got movement, you've got nutrition, you've got kind of mind body stuff. So my mind is just going crazy about what brainstorming what might be exciting for like Trevor's. And then who's our art? Kirsten, was that you? Whoa, my brain is just like getting excited thinking about you too. Does that make a little bit of sense? Like, I mean, really, there's lots of possibilities. And you have a good point in the sense that maybe you don't have enough information yet to be able to kind of start thinking about what your project would be that could be meaningful to you. Because since you've been in second grade a long time, that, might be, is something that as a special ed teacher, that a project for that wouldn't be as useful to you. I don't know, so we could think about that. Maybe we just have to be a little bit flexible in the first 2-3 weeks and then narrow down a project. That could be.
Could I quickly ask? Could I just ask a question?
Certainly.
Yeah. Okay, so when you say project, are you talking about something like we come up with a focus specifically on a way that we want to try something out in our own classroom and maybe implement lesson plans and give it a go and try something out and write about our experiences with that? Is that what you're talking about with the project?
It could be.
Okay.
It certainly could be. I've seen that done a lot, where it's been like, that's what a lot of teachers will think, that is very useful because they already have to develop lesson plans.
Right.
But then other teachers have said, I don't have a lot of right now. What I'm dealing with is I'm on a committee and I'm dealing with state legislative stuff. And I'm more interested in developing a proposal that I'm going to put forth to the PTA or to my legislator or something like that. So we have some flexibility as far as we really want, we have to know, like, what is exemplary teaching? And I know our class is called like Master Teacher of the 21st Century, but I'm so uncomfortable with that title. But it means like successful teaching for all children. And the reason it's important to put all children is because we acknowledge that schooling hasn't worked well for whole groups of kids. ever. And so, and it still doesn't. And the reason I know that is because I look at rates of college attendance and high school graduation, and I looked at like who's going to prison, and they almost flip, racially and economically, they're almost mirror images of who's going to college and who's going to prison. And so that kind of leaves it pretty open for us as far as exemplary teaching. What does that mean? I'm thinking about some of our newer teachers. Being a third year teacher, you're really starting to just get into your rhythm. And so you might be still kind of like really focused on your particular classroom. Once you've been in the classroom, 14 years or something, you got a lot of experience under your belt, and you might be doing something at the district level, you might be doing something at the state level, you might be part of a national group or a union or something like that. So you could be doing something that is about this successful teaching that has to do with that. So however you want to show that you are understanding what does successful teaching and learning for all learners mean, and then what would be useful to you in implementing it? What are you busy doing right now? So I always find that my best projects are whatever I'm doing right now. If I'm teaching future teachers, then I'm usually writing about that and publishing about that. That's how I ended up doing a whole bunch of work on documenting the teaching of exemplary Black teachers, because I was trying to show my future teachers that really all kids can learn, and that even the toughest kids, where other teachers fail, some teachers will succeed. And so I was busy with that. And so that's what my projects were. When I've been busy doing stuff in the community, I've been much more about parent groups. So that's kind of where my direction has been, is what would be useful. When I have published a book that's for the university, the parents in the community are like, thanks, but no thanks. They don't want, it's not helpful to them. I have to make a video or something that they can post or something, because they're not going to read a book. So that wasn't helpful to them. So whatever your area is, the idea, and maybe we just need a little bit of thinking time on it too, where we can propose something. Because really what you have to think about is, what is exemplary teaching? We have to understand that. And then how do we apply it? And the application part is going to be unique to each of you. And it could be, you think about these second grade teachers, some of you might be saying, well, second grade, but second grade in an inner city school as compared to a rural school, that might be something interesting. Sometimes when you put very different things together, you have some very creative ideas. So I'm just thinking about all the possibilities here, and I'm wondering, am I sparking any ideas for you? Is that helpful at all? Feel free to say no, it's not helpful.
Seeds of ideas.
Yeah, yeah. I can. I'm a brainstormer, but please feel free to always. It will be very difficult for you to hurt my feelings. Yeah. I have a verbal tick where I will say, a lot of times I'll say something, I'll be, standing up in front of my adult students at the university, and I'll say, right, class? And sometimes they'll say, wrong. And, I mean, so feel free to just say, no, I don't understand. No, that's not clear to me. No, I don't get it. Just feel free to just say so. Okay.
I do have a question. I'm so sorry. I feel like my brain's not just quite grasping this yet. I think I
Mhm.
don't quite understand, I guess maybe the objectives, like this study, like the class title is the master teacher. So I'm assuming that's our course materials and our projects and all these things are leading up to us
Yes.
learning how to become, or like what qualities are this. So we're trying to come up with these projects and assignments that will help us to study these things, or I guess I'm not sure what the objective or the end goal is. So I don't know how to like come up with like things that will fit with the end goal yet.
Okay, that's a good point. Like, what's the connection? So the end goal is to demonstrate that we know what successful teaching in the 21st century is. So we have to know what it is, and the way that we think about it, is in kind of like an applied context, in the sense that if you think about higher order thinking skills, your lower level ones are more like recall, and naming it. But then when you have to apply it and analyze and evaluate, then you're doing something with what you learned. And that's kind of the idea, is that I could do something like, I can show you a lot of examples of these exemplary teachers. And you could learn to identify the characteristics. And that's a good thing to do. I think you would need to do that. But then the idea is, can you take that and translate it into some sort of a practice in your own context? If you're a new teacher, maybe your focus is right in your own classroom. And even if you're an experienced teacher, you can't ever forget about your own students. But sometimes when you've been in the game for a while, you're also on other committees, you're also extending into the neighborhood, and so you're busy with other things. So you might want to do the application part in another area, which is fine too. So that's a really good point, is like, oh, what am I trying to head for? So in the 21st century, well, and it's been a long time since these kind of the schools that we have were created for in the Industrial Revolution. Well, we that's in our rear view mirror a long time ago. So even like right now, they're talking about getting rid of the time change on Sunday, because that was something that had to do with crops and rotations and working in the United States. Used to be a very rural kind of agricultural society, but we're not that anymore. And so our schools really are kind of stuck in this old model. And I don't mean old in a bad way, I just mean a different era. And so they kind of batch process people. And yet, even with all of the challenges that that schools have had, there have been teachers all the way through who've been able to reach and teach the students even under difficult circumstances, where they are learning and kind of the light bulbs on. So we want to know, what does it mean to do that? Why don't we even have a whole bunch of these teachers? Why is that not normal? And I have to say, my personal answer to that is I feel like a lot of us in teacher education are the reason. If you don't prepare teachers to go out to do that, then how do you get a surprise that they don't do it? So, it's a little ridiculous to send people out into schools and say, okay, I want you to be exemplary, but you didn't prepare them to do that. And then you wonder why schools keep reproducing the same patterns. It doesn't even make any sense. And then you really blame teachers for it. Well, what more did you want them to do? So I do feel like teacher education has a lot of responsibility for that. I think we could do a better job at the undergraduate level. And certainly we could do a better job kind of valuing what teachers do know when they come to graduate school, because you do know a lot. So that's what we're trying to build on. What do you already know? What do you already do? And let's see if we can there's a whole bunch of research on what these exemplary teachers do. Let's see if we can figure out what that is. And then we have to show accountability to the university by saying, look, this is how we're demonstrating we know what these exemplary teachers are, and some sort of an application that's meaningful to you.
Can I start?
Yes, please.
Brainstorm?
Yes.
Okay. At the high school level, what I recognize is happening to our students is they really don't want to be there. There is a lack of interest and a lack of engagement. And with special ed, the problems that I'm seeing there are, by the time they get to high school, our goal and some of the things that, I don't know what it's like in other districts, but some of the things that my district focuses on is transition, getting them graduated and getting them moving on in life and being able to succeed as an adult past high school. And because our focus is so heavily focused on transition, on getting them graduated, a lot of times I feel like the skills that they're still missing are falling through the cracks. And unlike an elementary school special ed teacher who has tools and programs and wonderful things that they can do to help these kids with their skills, it's not something that we focus on at the high school level. So we have a lot of kids that are coming to school, and not just special ed kids, like I teach both special ed and general ed, that are just going through the motions so they can get out of there. And that attitude is reflecting in students, but it's reflecting in a lot of teachers too. Let's just get them graduated and get them out of here. And in the meantime, when they're in high school, 3 years or 4 years in some districts, my district is 10, 11, 12, 3 years of their life that are very impactful in the rest of their life. Like, they're making major decisions in this part of their life. And I feel like I would like to be equipped with better tools to make my curriculum more engaging and fun, and give them reasons to be there and give them reasons to love learning, so that they can, we want them to be adults and we want them to be productive when they graduate, but they don't realize that they're going to be lifelong learners. Yeah. No matter what they do in life, they're going to be lifelong learners. And I would like for them to value being able to learn and knowing that that is something that they need.
Wow. I could see that being a very useful project. Like, we'll talk a lot about like just the way a lot of times these exemplary teachers look at what you're talking about with what those challenges are, is they're looking at it through this lens where they're saying, okay, they have to have those skills. They do need to graduate. And they're also simultaneously aware of and taking into account some of the things that maybe make it so that the kids aren't interested in engaging. And so they get to know the kids enough to be able to say, you know, what is it that is not engaging? Because sometimes, you know, students will say things that are very insightful, and the adults will think it's rude, but it's actually very astute. Like they might say things like, that's boring. And it's possible that it is, you know, that's quite possible. And sometimes they just have to learn that, you know, well, this is one of those hoops you have to jump through, and you just acknowledge that it is boring. Or, you know, maybe they just haven't seen the usefulness of it yet, and it hasn't been presented to them in a way that they kind of make the connection that it can be very useful to them. But I know for a lot of students, the information that they're learning, it is like, in some ways it's just so offensive. You know, it's like teaching them how not to be Black, or how not to be American Indian, or something like that. And so they will be resisting it because it affronts their dignity. And so there's sometimes reasons why they do that. So some teachers have done things like they've revamped all of their readings that they do, the books that they read, the assignments that they do. They revamp all that stuff to kind of address that idea of engagement in a way that accounts for that. So it's not so much, it's more about the perspective that they take as they approach those things like engagement and transition, and they contextualize that sort of a thing. So I could see that being a very, very interesting project. So
I find it interesting because engagement is a deal with elementary as well.
sure
It
is.
doesn't matter what we try to present. That I don't know if it's the pandemic, society as a whole, I don't know, but engagement is a huge challenge.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think it's more just like human beings. Like if you talk to me about engineering, I'm not super interested. I married an engineer, and he will drone on and on and on. And I know it's important, you know, and there's, you know, sometimes I'm on a need to know basis, and I need to know how it works out, and I appreciate that. But, you know, it's not one of those things that just makes my world light up. So, you know, but definitely on a need to know basis. So I think there's value in that. I want to be cognizant of your time too. So let me make a suggestion. And you just kind of let me know. You can put it in the chat or call it out. I'm sensing that we don't have enough information yet to be able to say what kind of project we want to do, whether it's a group one or an individual one. We're not sure yet. Maybe when we define exemplary teaching a little more, then we might have a better idea. Does that sound about right? Does that need to be adjusted, tweaked a little?
Can I ask real quick, are we, so is it possible for us to do certain things in groups and be able to talk to each other without having to do an overall group project?
Yes.
Okay,
absolutely.
because for me, I think that would be great, because I love to learn from my peers and bounce ideas off of people. And
and get in different types of groups where sometimes I'm with secondary teachers only, and sometimes I'm with a variety of different types of teachers. And so I learn from them, but I would like to be able to zone in on what I'm doing in my classroom
Yeah.
for my project. I don't know if anybody else feels like that.
I feel like that can be done. And when I was in my doctoral program, it just kind of organically developed where we shifted groups like that, but we were kind of a small cohort where we were school teachers going through a program, and we did meet in person. And so, that was one thing where we kind of knew a little bit more about each other, and things organically, the groups kept shifting, but it was a support system where we would be able to bounce ideas off. And I can remember, sometimes it was just in a simple comment my peer made that suddenly made this whole thing click for me, and then something I said that for another. And sometimes I really did not like being on group projects. Sometimes I had choices, sometimes I didn't. So I can totally, we can conclude, we can say, let's have some options. We're not sure what the final project would be, but let's leave it open to, if you would like to do your own, if you would like to do a group one, I'm okay with that too. If you want to, the name discussion board, hopefully you're getting to know each other a little bit there so that you feel comfortable reaching out to each other and being able to say, hey, I have this question. Do you all know? You probably do. Sometimes the undergraduates don't, but do you know how to find each other's emails and how to email each other on Canvas? You do? Okay. So if anybody doesn't, just say so, because that way you don't need me. You can access each other, whether you're in a group or not. You have each other. You all know a lot. So we can definitely do that without making any decisions about what our final project will be yet. We can propose things, but we can definitely leave it so that if you want to do an individual one, you can do that. If you want to do something with a group, you could do that too. That assumes you find somebody else that wants to do it with you, but that I don't have any problem with that. So does that sound okay so far? We're on the same page. We're not sure we're not ready to make a decision about what the final project is, but we know for sure we can do it individual, or we could do it in a small group.
Dr. Harris, did you see the message that Kirsten sent?
No.
So she said, can I read it, Kirsten? Is that okay? She said, can we do an individual or group project that presents the different characteristics and finds people that exemplify the characteristics, or case studies that depict those, and then show how we want to adopt those qualities in our own situations and present them in creative ways? Yeah, sorry.
That sounds amazing. That sounds very doable too. Because sometimes some people's projects are really like for dissertations, and it's like we have 7 weeks. Okay. I don't mean to put low expectations, certainly not, because even if it's something that you want to start now, by all means, so I don't want to put a lid on what you want to do. But that sounds something that would be very useful. It clearly demonstrates what our focus of our course is. It would be doable. measurable. Yeah, that sounds wonderful. That helps us to kind of get the juices flowing about ideas. And it's okay to kind of percolate. Now you're going back to your classrooms, you're in other classes, you're in other conversations. Some of my best thinking I do when I'm just walking my dog at the park, so just don't be overly concerned if you aren't like finding an idea off the top of your head that you're just in love with. We'll what about this? If we spend a couple of readings at least next week for sure, saying, what does exemplary teaching look like? And then go from there. I'm kind of concerned. I don't want it to be taken out of context in the sense that a lot of times what these teachers are doing is that they are responding to the patterns that are pushing kids out of school. And so, like a lot of times, I know you've heard of the school to prison pipeline. So exemplary teachers have to deal with classroom management. It's just that they do it differently. So instead of contributing to the school to prison pipeline, they're actually busting that up and redirecting kids. And so the way that they do that is what we're looking at. But do you see what I'm saying? Like, you kind of have to understand the context of it, that schools have not been functioning well. And there's reasons why they don't function well, which isn't to blame teachers. And then these exemplary teachers, they come in, and what they're doing is they are interrupting that outward flow of pushing kids out, and they're promoting possibilities and getting kids through, not just through it, but the way that they do it is to really turn the light bulbs on. They'll do things that the kids know that they have to pass these tests, but they have a reason why they have to pass it. So it kind of reminds me when I was teaching second grade and I was trying to teach possessive the apostrophes. Do you put the apostrophe before the S or after the S? Well, it wasn't until I was teaching my second graders, they were on a kind of a need to know where they were writing their stories and they needed apostrophes. And suddenly it made sense of when you would put the apostrophe before the S or after the S. So kind of that contextualized need to know sort of thing, that's key to what these exemplary teachers do. And they're very aware of the dynamics that the kids face every day. I think a lot of the stuff that I've done on transracial adoption has been helpful in that way too, where sometimes these Black children adopted and raised by white parents, the children would tell them about what was happening, and then their white parents would see it through their own kind of individual life white experience and completely miss what the kids were experiencing. So that would be, kind of learning how to pivot, and everyone can do it. Everyone can. I had future teachers who were so amazed at these exemplary Black teachers here in Mobile. And one of my little students, and this is a common Southern phrase, they'll say, "Oh, bless their heart." But this young man was in one of Miss Buchanan's classroom, and Miss Buchanan was an exemplary Black teacher. And this young man, and he was white, and he said, "I'm so impressed. I want to do this. And then his face kind of fell and he said, but I can't be Black. And she started laughing and she was like, well, you don't have to be Black. You have to be you. But what you have to do is you have to pivot. You have to learn how to connect with the kids' realities. And some of the realities are that there's very real things going on when you walk around in a body that's Black. So, or you walk around in a body that's gendered as female, or somehow you're tagged as not the right sexuality. So, you know, that's what these exemplary teachers do. So, do you feel like if we go from here as far as let's look at and kind of explore some case studies and some, what do you want to call it? Just kind of like descriptions of what exemplary teachers are, we can get that far and then make some decisions from there? Do you feel like that would be okay? Do you feel safe enough? I know sometimes people feel a little uncomfortable without a lot of, you know, like security, like we're doing this and then this and then this. Do you feel okay with, we're going to take the next week, possibly 2 weeks, and just look at exemplars of exemplary teachers and kind of
That sounds
analyze
great.
those? That
That'd
feels
be
okay.
perfect for me.
Okay. Okay. If it's not okay, even if there's just one person who says no, will you put it in the chat? And then I will, you know, I definitely don't want to say we rule by majority. Each one of you is important. So I'll address that if you're not comfortable. But I feel like we kind of have a good shared experience as far as I think we have some idea about where we're going. Like Ashley was asking about with where are we going? We kind of have a sense about it. We have some sense of what our boundaries are going to be as far as we have some flexibility for our final project. We know for sure we want options as far as do it individual or a group. And right now we want to start with looking at what does exemplary teaching look like? Does that sound right? Did I capture that well? Am I forgetting anything? Say yes, you are, or no.
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. Sounds good. And you know, we can do this. We can do this. If you want to meet sometimes in chat, I will try not to be such a talker. Okay. Okay. So so Miss Barrett, I'll get with you, okay? I want to be sensitive to the time. It's 8:16 where you all are and 9:16 here. I can't wait to come back to Utah. I'm so excited. But I love Alabama too. So okay. Do y'all feel okay about signing off for tonight? Any last thoughts you want to put in the chat or anything? I'll read the chat. No, you're good?
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Okay. All right. It was wonderful to spend time with you all. Thank you. I know you're busy and you have a lot on your plates. I just enjoy you. So, okay. All righty. We'll be in touch then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, this is Coylene. I just missed that very first part. So I just want to make sure, is there another chat that I need to worry about coming up sooner? We haven't scheduled that.
No, we haven't scheduled that. Our week 1 module, we're not changing that. We were just like tentatively planning, you know, exactly what we want to do for week 2. So we haven't really decided on like grading points or anything like that. Like,
Okay.
but we do know some things we don't want to do. So that's helpful too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do
I
we
am in
know-
that same class with April Lynn that the professor put us in groups. There's like 4 of us in a group or whatever. And it is kind of fun that we're in those groups to discuss. And sometimes he has us turn something in all together, but it's just nice to, which people you're going to talk to, and you kind of get used to those people. And, it's just kind of fun to be able to do that. I've not had a professor do that before, and it's been fun. So
Yeah.
that is a good idea. It's something I thought maybe I'll do that with my students. I probably should have thought of that sooner.
Yeah. Oh, they kicked up a fuss last semester, but they ended up, that was their favorite thing. They
Yeah.
got so close with each other. But I want to acknowledge that they did, there are some definite drawbacks. I thought it might be a time saver. In some ways, I think it was. In other ways, it wasn't very efficient. But they ended up becoming very close friends, and they felt like they learned more from each other. So I'm okay with that. I don't have to be the star of the show. So
Yeah, sometimes it is just nice to, you bounce something off of somebody and then they come up with something and you're like, I hadn't thought of it that way. And so anyway, so then you're able to kind of work through it. So
yeah.
anyway, I thought it was a good idea. So yeah, thank you for meeting with us.
Okay.
And yeah, so I guess we just move forward then, huh?
Yep. We'll just keep moving forward and create it as we go.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Coylin.
All right.
All right. And Miss Barrett, you're
First 15 minutes, what did you talk about?
oh yeah, because you had your parent teacher conferences, right?
I did.
Yeah, you really didn't miss much. First of all, I forgot to press record the first 15 minutes, but basically, we were simply, somebody reminded me, but we were just introducing ourselves. I think there were 11 of us. And so they just, it was kind of like the name story where they just, you didn't miss anything except their names.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So
Yeah.
how much of these books are we supposed to have read this week?
However much you feel comfortable with. I'm still kind of leaning toward this one as like a book club sort of a thing. Like I'll just have you all, so here's my idea. We didn't talk about this too much, but my idea is that I say something like, have this book read by April 12th and meet with your group by April 13th to discuss it. And then this one, I thought we could compare and contrast this one to this one. This is more of a kind of a nuts and bolts about what are the dimensions of exemplary teaching and kind of a framework for it. And so it is useful to kind of compare and contrast the two, but this is more like somebody putting it into action. And this is more of like a think aloud, like this is how you do it sort of a thing. And so I thought maybe we would read this one in sections.
Sounds like
so I think, really you don't have to have any of it read. If I was just gonna read, this one is probably the easier read. It's more like, you can read it on your lunch break, or sometimes when I'm waiting for my husband to do something, I'll just pull out a book. I don't have to be totally, it's kind of it's made for very busy teachers.
Cool.
So it's not made to be like super theoretical or
Great.
it's by a teacher for teachers. So
Awesome.
it's trying to be sensitive to teachers' time and energy and ability to concentrate. So I appreciate that about him because he is a teacher. So
That's awesome.
yeah, yeah,
Cool. Sounds good.
yeah.
So one of the students said that we just go into the box at the right of our computers that's the inbox, and we can pull up classmates. So I'll have to go play with that and check that out.
Yeah. Uh-huh. If you look were they talking about how to email your classmates?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you go to the inbox on Canvas
Mm-hmm.
there and you click where you're going to start a new email, and then you'll have to select the class, and then it gives you options about who to email. And so then you'll see the names, students in this class, and it drops down, and then you can either pick all of them, or you can pick one or two, or
Okay.
so
Thank you.
yeah, I think if you just kind of click around with it, you'll see it. It's pretty straightforward.
Awesome. All right.
Yeah.
Was there something else you needed to tell me?
I don't think so. I don't think
All
so.
right. thank
If
you
there
so
is,
much.
it can wait until you get some rest.
All right. Well, it's my daughter's birthday and my family's making all kinds of noise down there. So I feel
Oh, okay.
like,
Oh, you
okay, I
got-
better go.
yes, 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 yes. Okay, have
right.
a good
Thank
birthday
you.
party.
Thank you. I'll see
Okay.
you.
Good night.
Night.